Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Pre-Incident Planning for Chemical, Biological, Radiological, and Nuclear Waste Management. The last 15 minutes of this webinar will be left for questions and answers on the presentation. Anyone on today's webinar may receive a certificate of attendance. You will need to attend this live webinar for 60 minutes. If you did not request a certificate of attendance upon registration and you would like one, please send an email to epa-webinar-series@icf.com. Just a note, EPA cannot guarantee acceptance of certificates by your organization, nor can certificates be provided for viewing the webinar recording. Thank you for being with us today, and now it's my pleasure to introduce our presenter. Anna Cherson has been employed by US EPA for nearly 30 years and has spent the last 15 years focusing on waste management issues related to Homeland Security incidents. Anna has participated in numerous exercises and real-life responses, such as the Gulf oil spill and Hurricane Sandy, and has provided support to states and localities in preparing waste management plans for large-scale events. She has led the effort to develop a 4-step process for pre-incident waste management planning for large-scale events. And now I will turn it over to our presenter, Anna Cherson. Thank you. Oh, you're muted, Anna.
Thank you. Sorry about that. All right, so I hope you can all see my screen now. The presentation today is the Waste Management Planning Tool, which we are very excited to have nearly live. It's been in development. Actually, a version of it already exists at wasteplan.epa.gov. The current version is almost live. We're expecting it to go live any day now. We were hoping to have it live already for you. Unfortunately, that is not the case. However, I have a version of it that I'm able to demonstrate today. The purpose of the tool is to assist users in creating pre-incident waste management plans. The intended use is it for large-scale incidents, so not the kind of waste management that you do on a day-to-day basis or even after a small incident of some sort, but these wide area, large-scale incidents that many communities are completely unprepared for. The audience are state and local planners, although anybody who wishes to use the tool for their own purposes, for planning purposes, is welcome to do so. The tool walks a user through the various issues that we believe, the EPA believes, should be addressed in a good pre-incident waste management plan. And it provides some sample language to assist the users. We liken it to TurboTax, where the user is asked a few questions and enters certain information, and based on the information that the user enters, the tool can generate additional information. So it's not just a place to enter information, although it is that as well, but a place where we can provide the user with some information. So it prompts the user to enter certain data and then provides information, particularly on the waste streams that are expected to be generated, the waste volumes that a user can expect in their community from the type of incident under question, potential facility types that you might need to use, and also additional information on which facilities are near you. The tool stores all the information. However, a user can also download the information in the form of a Word document, which they can then edit if they wish. Currently, as I mentioned earlier, there is a version, a quick start version that exists. If you go to wasteplan.epa.gov, you will currently see that version. Once the new version is live, you will be able to reach that new version, which is the one I'll be demonstrating today, at that URL. The fully featured tool will be closely integrated with other waste management tools such as iWaste and the DDRT, which I will get to a description of in just a little bit. It's just going through some final onboarding processes that are behind the scenes and don't really impact the actual tool itself, just getting it up and running on our cloud service. Tentatively, as of right now, the end of July is when we hope to have it live, literally any day now. Even once it goes live, we will be continuing to add some additional features. The ability to share plans with other users is a commonly requested feature. We also hope to get some improved data on the waste volumes. And we're hoping to develop an offline mobile app, which can be used in the field if you don't have internet. And then when you're back in the office with internet, you can sync it with the tool itself. That is estimated to be developed maybe 2-3 years down the road. And so now I will switch over to the tool itself. So hopefully you all can see that on the screen. This is after a login and registration process that I'm not going to go through today. But once you have registered one time and have logged in, you will get to this screen. As you can see on the top, this version is not the live version. It's for testing purposes. However, it's going to look exactly the same. I'm going to start from the right and work my way to the left here so that when I get to this plan, I can actually show you how a plan is developed. The resources tab at this point has 3 links. These links are actually themselves links of resources. So, you know, this is a fairly comprehensive set of information. However, we'll be adding more to it as more resources are developed or as we identify additional resources. The My Plans page will list all of your plans once you've developed some using the tool. So you can see I have a number of things titled test. If you click on that, you will get a summary of the tool, which you can then print, and that will be in a Word format. Over here, if you go to edit, it will take you to the tool itself and allow you to continue developing it, developing your plan. That will be this start a plan, which is what we're going to do right now. So there's only one mandatory field in this entire tool, and that is the plan title, because without that, you won't be able to identify or find your plan after it's done. So we'll call it yet another test. Okay. Over here on the left, you'll see all of the what we call chapters of a plan. These are all the different types of information and categories of information that we feel the plan should include. I'm not going to go through every single field. We just simply don't have the time. I'm going to go over through some key fields and also some other features. One feature I'd like to point out is over here, you'll see a question mark. That will provide some additional information, either on what should be entered into that field, if it's not very clear from the title, or it might provide links to other tools where you can go to develop the information for that field, if another tool exists. All of these fields where their texts are adjustable like this. So as you're entering information, if you feel more comfortable making it larger or smaller, you can. In some cases, of course, it's a drop-down menu. And you will notice that in this field, we have italicized information. So that is, I don't want to call it boilerplate, but it's sort of sample information. We have been asked to provide this by people who really don't know where they might even start with developing a plan. So we've given them some ideas that is completely editable. Once you start to edit it, you can see it switched from italics to non-italics. That shows to you that it has been modified from the original boilerplate. Okay, throughout the tool, there's also going to be some tables. These tables, again, the fields are adjustable. What we felt were the most important fields are immediately visible. However, there may be, in some of these tables, quite a few additional fields. Now, again, none of these are mandatory. So if you don't know what you want to enter in any of these fields, or you're going to find the phone number, say, but you just haven't, done that research yourself, it's not required. You can continue without doing that. Obviously, you can add additional rows, and if you don't want them, you can delete them. Now I'm going to hit save and continue. Over here on the left, normally, as I said, you can move around in any order. You don't have to follow the order. The tool does walk you through in order, but you don't have to. The exception is that plan overview page. If I had not entered, let's see if I delete this, what happens? Well, it did because it remembers, oh, I left an R, that's why. So if I had not entered, it tells me, no, please do enter this field. You can see once I have entered that it shows up here in the top left. That's so you know which plan you're working on. All right, now this materials and waste streams section is a rather significant section. Again, you have some information at the top. It also will tell you about where we're getting this. This is where we are integrating with another tool that provides our data. The integration is real time. In other words, if something gets changed in that other tool, it will automatically be changed in our tool. Now, it's not going to change in an already created plan. So you would have to go through this development process again. But at the time that you are entering the information, it will be live. If you want to know more about that tool, it provides that link for you. Hello. Okay. Now there's two ways to enter this information. You can just go ahead and enter it yourself if you wish. But we're going to use that waste materials estimator tool, which is that other tool that I mentioned that the data is being pulled from. The first thing you're going to be asked is whether or not the plan should include open space. We're going to say yes, and we're going to say 20 miles, 20 square miles. You then have a list here of structures, types of structures that might exist in your area. So you can say, yes, I have a hospital. I have a couple of office buildings. I have some schools. Oops, sorry. I was trying to find residential buildings. There are single family residence. There it is. So let's just say I have a bunch of these. Obviously, those numbers I just created for the purposes of this demonstration. Once you have that information in, you generate the estimate. Now, what this does is based on the data that we have available, the waste streams that you can expect, and where possible, an estimate of the tonnage or cubic yards of that waste stream, that based on the information that we have. So it's a fairly lengthy list, even from those very few things that I entered, buildings that I entered. You can, of course, include them all, or you can select them individually. I'm just going to leave them all in for now. If you click on a tool, it will tell you what that means in the terms of waste, which may or may not be self-explanatory for any given waste stream. So for example, here it's just talking about residential wood from residential constructions and so forth. Okay, so now I've decided we're going to add them all. So I add all of the waste streams to my plan. Now I can again add or delete them from here. And for each of these waste streams, I can add additional information. So for example, I can add regulatory status. And as you can see here, this is state, local, federal, tribal, territorial. In other words, whatever regulatory status might apply. If you're in a border state, you may want to include international regulatory status issues. Let's say you're near Canada or Mexico. For whatever reason, your waste might be going to one of those countries because it's a wide scale incident that impacts them both. And you know, packaging and handling, does it contain or might this particular, what are we looking at here? Asphalt, okay, well, it's not likely to. But in some cases, we've been told it's useful to know if that particular waste might contain asbestos. There's that forecast quantity. You can change it if you know for whatever reason that you are going to have more or less of it than the estimate. You're free to change it. The only thing is if you change it and then you go back in and rerun the estimates, as I mentioned, if there's some updates to the other tool, that will not be reflected. So there's additional information here that you can enter for each individual waste stream. If you don't have that information, that's perfectly okay. As I mentioned several times, the only mandatory field is that name field. Okay, so once you've entered all of that information, another thing that you might want is all these different waste streams might have specific people who are associated with them, roles and responsibilities for managing those wastes, subject matter experts, and so forth. So you can add those people. Just as before, there's additional information. When you click the plus, you can add additional rows. So I tried to leave this page without saving. It fortunately reminds me that I need to change, that I need to save. That prevents you from losing and having to re-enter that information. Now the next section that we've moved to is characteristics of the waste, sampling and analysis. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but it deals with analytes over here and of course the labs that you would be sending it to. And under the information, it's going to add what limitations or requirements that lab has. Waste management strategies. What are you going to do with this waste once you've gathered it up? I'm not talking about its final destination, but in the meantime, you probably have to put it in a staging area or some other location. What's more, you're going to have staging areas for things like resources, like equipment. So again, we've got this sample information here. These are just general procedures that you are going to follow, that you say that you will follow in the case of an incident. I'm not going to look at those very closely, but what I am going to look at is, so over here, you've got a place to list staging and storage locations. Here, as I mentioned, we have links to other tools. In this case, the link is to this waste storage and staging site selection tool. So the data from this tool is not automatically entered because it's just a very different format. However, you can use this tool and it provides the link to it. I'm not going to go there because I don't want to get lost in different tabs here. Anyway, you can enter your site name if you know a specific site and some information about that site. Or, as says up here, you may not know a specific site ahead of time, right? But you might know some criteria that you might want to consider. And we've got some things that you might want to consider or you will enter. We will not be, when selecting a site, we want to make sure the site is not near a wetland, is on a paved surface, or the opposite, on a porous surface. We want to make sure that there's no residents within X distance, or that there's no environmental justice concerns with that location. Okay, so this is just criteria that that the planner says they need to consider when identifying a staging and storage site after an incident occurs. But hopefully you have a few sites at least that you can identify ahead of time. The parking lot behind the abandoned warehouse, for example. Well, you give it a name, and we're actually going to do that here. I'll just say site. I'll show you later why I wanted to enter one. Here's additional information about that site. As you can see, in this case, we have a lot more information that is possible to enter, a lot more fields. Here's some important ones. Why did you choose this selection? And also longitude and latitude. Why is that? Can that be important? Well, in some cases, an address is not available or can't be available, but you know where the latitude and longitude is. For GPS location, that's very helpful. But of course, you are free not to enter that information if you don't need it. We have the same type of thing for equipment staging and storage, decontamination stations, and other waste origins. Let's say a waste came from someplace, from a particular building, for example, and you did not put it into a storage, a staging area for whatever reason, but took it directly to some sort of processing facility. So that's where you would enter additional information. Okay. Now, again, I didn't save. I really don't need to for this, but so waste management facilities, this is another section where we have a close tie-in with iWaste, the other tool that where we're pulling data from, and that tool in turn is pulling data from another tool that's a mapping tool. So it says that description is here, tells you where you're finding facilities. You can, of course, manually enter any information you want, but here's a list of facility types. You can enter whatever you want. For example, I'm going to say a subtitle C landfill, hazardous waste combustion, and, oh, I don't know, wastewater treatment. Now, you can either select a state or an EPA region. If you try to do both, the tool gets a little confused. We're going to say region 3, which is where I'm located. Any other notes that you have? And we're going to use this zip code. I'm just entering my own. The only purpose of entering this zip code is for straight line distances to the facilities. So in some cases, we'll be able to identify that now. That's straight line distance, not road as driven distance. Well, you'll see in a second why. So now I click that, and again, you get this list of facilities. Here you can see the distance. You can sort by distance. Hello. Where it says distance unknown, that's because we, for whatever reason, don't have a specific zip code for it to calculate that, make that calculation, or a specific address. But over here, you can see all the ones that do, and the actual distance. As in the earlier table, you can click select all, but in this case, we actually probably don't want you to. The idea here is to have some facilities identified ahead of time, and then you've made the planner has made contact with these facilities, has actually talked to them about whether or not in an incident they would be a suitable place for the waste to go. So I'm just going to randomly here select a couple, okay, and I'm going to add them to my plan. Now you can, as in previous screens, you can scroll across the most important fields and then scroll down for a whole bunch of fields where you can enter information. The goal is for the decision maker at the time of the incident to be able to look at this and choose from an already narrowed down list of facilities. We also encourage people, as I said earlier, to make that contact. And somewhere in here is, when did you last make contact? I'm not going to spend the time searching for it, but it's in here somewhere. You've got permit status, compliance history. That might be very important if you're making a decision. Do you have a pre-negotiated contract? What's the daily throughput? That could be very important based on the volumes that your incident, once it actually happens, is generating. Does this facility have any specific waste acceptance criteria? Let's say it was an anthrax attack, such as we had in 2001 here in DC. Now, a lot of facilities, even after the waste has been treated, won't accept that waste. But if you negotiate ahead of time and say, in order for this facility to accept the waste, they want to have X amount of testing done to verify that there are 0 active colony forming spores. So that's something that you would actually have to discuss with that facility and then enter here. Obviously, costs is an important one, whether or not there's environmental justice concerns or community concerns, and so forth. Okay. Save and continue. Now, transportation is another important area, but I'm not going to spend too much time here. The main table here is haulers. Haulers come out of the woodwork during an incident. You may be able to enter information ahead of time on certain haulers. Other haulers, if you're updating your plan during an incident, you might want to get that information. Again, the goal is to have the information ready at hand in a plan for the decision maker, who ultimately is going to be saying, okay, we're going to use this one or this one. So you don't want to limit during the planning stage while developing this plan. You don't want to limit yourself to just 1 or 2, right? You want to have several that the decision maker can then choose from. Tracking and reporting. We strongly recommend that during an incident, the waste that is generated is tracked and reported upon, even if that report is internal. We have found that it is very helpful later on when people start asking questions. During the incident, people are more concerned with, let's get this off the streets, let's get it taken care of. Afterwards, people start asking, well, wait a minute, where did it go? Why did it go there? How much of it went there? What kind of waste went to which facility and why, and so forth. So here, remember I entered that site as the staging area. So you're going to enter a waste origin, someplace where that waste shipment is starting from. And then you're going to enter waste destination, where that waste is going, that particular shipment of waste is going to. Then later, that same or a different shipment is going, but that might include that same waste, is going from this facility to yet another facility. So this can track the waste more or less from cradle to grave, right? It's going to add the facility that it's ultimately going to, and hopefully any facilities along the way, whether they are staging areas, treatment areas, or actual final destinations. As always, there's additional information here load number or whatever tracking number you have, whatever you choose to use, the waste type, and the state. In this case, we mean state, not state like Virginia, but state like solid or aqueous. I think we were planning to change that actually. You are not, of course, required to use this tracking system that we have. Some people find it helpful to have requested that we assist them with developing a tracking system. However, some places may already have one in place, in which case you simply will enter that information here, a link perhaps to it, and then ignore this. So you have that option. You don't have to use it. We do, however, encourage that some way or another tracking be done. Excuse me. Community outreach. One of the things we have found over the years is that communities are becoming more and more concerned about the wastes that are going into or through their neighborhoods. So we think it's prudent to plan ahead and start creating contacts with the community so that there's a trust that is developed ahead of time, so that when an incident occurs, you've already talked to people ahead of time. You know these people, you've had communications with them. This allows you to say, okay, how are you going to reach out? Who are you going to reach out to? So organization names, again, as before, right? Additional information. And you might have some pre-scripted information. Either you already have it or you're going to develop it. As you develop it, it's going to be housed. Now we are hoping to have a feature in the future where you can actually upload things like this to the tool. Currently, that is not an option due to security concerns. We didn't want to hold up launch of the tool while we sort through those. So for now, hopefully you're housing that sort of information somewhere else. And here's where you can provide the URL for that. The same applies to things like maps that maybe are up here with the waste streams or the facilities. So right now you would have to have those housed somewhere else and just link to them. Finally, a resource summary. This can be boiled down to what am I going to need? What do I already have? And how do I get it if I don't have enough? So let's say I'm going to need 3 backhoes. I have 1 backhoe. Where am I going to get the other 2 backhoes? And that may be something along the lines of a mutual aid agreement with the neighboring county or a contract with a particular vendor, whatever it is. But the goal here is, again, to have that idea ahead of time. What is it you need? What do you already have? And where are you going to get the rest? We have the same for staff, for packaging materials, for PPE. Here's those mutual aid agreements I mentioned, any pre-negotiated contracts that you may have either with facilities or with haulers or other service providers, specialized experts that you might need, and any other resource that we didn't think of. Okay, and in short, that is, it took less time than I thought. We have now walked through the entire tool. And so I'm going to bounce this over for questions.
Sure thing. Thank you, Anna, for the great presentation and running us through this demonstration of the tool. We do have a couple questions, so I'll go ahead and start with those. First question is, should we assume that waste plastic is considered other?
I'm going to bounce that question to Paul Lemieux, who is the expert on the tool that the data that we have is actually coming from. Paul, plastics.
Well, many of the plastic items are listed already as in their I guess their normal state, you know, like maybe furniture or other types of items. if there's like a bunch of commingled junk like you might have at a hurricane that isn't easily identifiable as being from a certain source, that there are abilities in the waste estimates to add things like that yourself and just manually add those particular types of items. It's a lot easier if you can recognize where the waste came from, but we realize that sometimes it's just a pile of junk and you don't really know where it came from. So there is the ability to add that manually. Did that answer your question?
Unfortunately, we can't hear from the folks unless they answer back in the Q&A. So please feel free to let us know.
So I as you can see on the screen, moved over to the plan, the sort of Word version of the plan. And here you can see, for example, art and music equipment. Well, that would include some potentially include some plastics. Gym and sports equipment, again, there might be some plastics. So the plastics are identified, as Paul mentioned, as part of a larger waste stream. Now, if you believe that it would be helpful to separately identify whether or not a particular waste stream might contain plastics, the way we did with asbestos, please let us know and we can consider adding such a, it would simply be a yes or no field like the one that we had for asbestos. I hope that does answer your question. Do we have any other questions?
We do, and we did get a reply of yes, it did answer the question. So
okay.
So the next question, somewhat similar as far as material, is wind turbine blade waste accounted for in this tool? And then an additional question is this waste data available for research purposes?
I'll let Paul answer the waste data question since the data is sourced from his tool. As far as the blades, I do not believe that waste is separately identified at this time. We are, as I mentioned, I think in the beginning, almost as soon as this tool goes live, we already have plans for updates and additional features. And one of the things we're trying to look at is getting additional data on additional waste streams. And that certainly could be one. Another one along a similar vein is solar panels. There are a lot of solar panels that could be during an incident turned into waste. And that is something that we currently don't have any data on, but we are hoping to gather that data and include it in future versions of this tool. Now, as far as the research question, Paul, I'm going to bounce that to you.
All right. In the chat there, I put the URL for iWaste, and that's where most of the waste estimate data are generated from and brought into this tool. And if you go into iWaste, it doesn't need a username or ID or anything. It's publicly available. There is in the waste materials estimator where this tool is drawing those data, it talks about the source for all of the data, where it originally came from, what the default assumptions are. And we tried to document that pretty completely as much as we could. So the information that you're after for the source of the data should be in iWaste.
And that presumably is available to users for research purposes.
Yes. Yeah, probably the easiest way would be to do a bogus waste estimate and just include all of the waste types and export it to an Excel spreadsheet. And then you could manipulate the Excel spreadsheet however you see fit. You could, put in, adjustable parameters or whatever kind of manipulations you wanted to do. But it does allow you to export as an Excel file all of the waste estimates.
Great.
Okay, any other questions?
Yep. Well, we have quite a few coming in. So
Okay,
next
great.
question is, does the tool include the definitions of small, medium, and large for buildings?
It does not. Paul, I think those definitions came over also from iWaste, from the materials estimator. I don't think it has those definitions because, or maybe it does. Paul?
Well, it's all in, I think it's all in iWaste. I'm not sure whether it, all of those data got brought over to the tool or not, but it does define what we mean by a large hospital and a medium hospital. And again, where the source of all of the default numbers that are in iWaste are all there by links. So you should be able to see where the data came from. And if you see fit to change it, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, there's some information here on at least where the data came from. It doesn't, estimates based on square footage, but it still doesn't tell you what means small, what means large.
Try clicking on offices and see what it says. No, the one above, right there in the middle. I think that's where it came up with what we mean by different types of buildings.
It doesn't say anything about size though.
I know it's in there somewhere.
All right, well, you know what? We'll chalk this up to something that we should find if it's available and include in the question in the, you know, the little question mark where we have information, and include that because that's actually a very good question. And I think Paul's right. Somewhere in here, it does say something about it, but it's not readily apparent. We will find it and we will include it in the next go round with this tool.
Okay, so I have a couple more questions. So the next one is, how do you handle low-level radioactive material using the tool?
Again, I'm going to punt to Paul. Paul?
We don't explicitly include radioactive material, but there is, you could use it as one of the other items. And there is in the list of available facilities, there are the low-level radioactive waste repositories, as well as RCRA Subtitle C landfills that have low activity waste authorization for accepting it. So it would be that you would have to add like an additional waste stream that would reflect that material. And then when you assign it to a different disposal facility, you would make sure that you would assign it to a disposal facility that is able to accept the radioactive material.
And the other point here being that we simply don't have the data on volumes. So while you can enter that information manually, we would not be able at this time to provide you with an estimate of the volume generated simply because the data are lacking. But we're trying to get more data. That is going to be a continuous improvement. We're going to be adding additional waste streams and additional volume or better volume estimates as we move forward. Other questions?
Yep. Next question is, how do you integrate this plan to include state municipal partners who may not fit the term community partner? Is there an exception?
You can add whatever you want there as far as the community outreach. Also, once the tool is live, you'll be able to share with you may not be able to share the actual tool, but you can share access. Let me step back. You may not be able to take a plan and share it other than by printing it out. However, you can or soon will be able to share access to the tool, because it's not usual that one person has all the information. And so that's where you might also include other partners. Furthermore, if you wish to have a different partner here that is another municipality rather than an organization, you certainly can enter that here. There's nothing preventing you from doing so. So if you say, you know, such and such county, which is a different county from yours, and the contact information, you know, you can have that there. Similarly, there's another place where that might be, and that is, I think, here, where you've got roles and responsibilities. You may also add, you know, representative from XYZ county or XYZ jurisdiction, and then, you know, their contact information there. I hope that answered the question.
And I would just add that right at the top of our list of enhancements that we're going to be making to the tool once we get all of the initial hurdles of getting it online is adding the ability to share your
Yes.
plan with other people,
Yes.
or to duplicate your plan and send it to somebody else so they could work on it themselves using the data you inputted. So that's going to be one of the first things we do as an enhancement.
Yeah, we were hoping to have that done for this round, and unfortunately ran into some security hurdles with that and decided to go ahead with the launch without that feature. However, that feature is going to be, as Paul said, one of the first ones that we add. So the goal there is to have the ability to include other people in the plan. So one person would be responsible for the plan, but they can farm out. Let's say, I mean, one person is not likely to have all the information, or even one department. So you can add collaborators and give them access, either full access or, you know, just read-only access as you choose, based on email.
So we have a couple more questions here. One particular question is about accessing the tool. Folks are saying that it looks like the EPA LAN account is needed, or the link appears to be broken. Someone saying they're using Chrome. So are there any issues with the type of browser you're using, or any other information?
Right. Okay. I want to repeat that this tool currently is not live. There is a live version of the tool if you go to wasteplan.epa.gov. And yes, indeed, you need to have a EPA account. That's the registration. It's not a difficult thing to obtain. And you only have to do that the one time. Once you've registered, you can log in. You will not at this time access this tool as I've been demonstrating, because this is still not quite live. So if you go to wasteplan.epa.gov, what you're going to see is our quick start version, which is the early and only partial version. It's really, this is almost a whole different tool, covering some of the same information. That one will disappear and this one will replace it. And that should be happening within the next couple of weeks. And we have tested it on all the major browsers. So Chrome, Firefox, and even Safari, I believe. So the browser should not make a difference. I don't know if you're getting an error message right now. I think we'll have to refer you to our technical people and find out why you are having. So you may contact me and we can work through that. But if you were trying to get to this tool and you couldn't, that's because it's not live yet. Try again in 2 weeks. Actually, we'll send out an announcement when it goes live. I'm sure we can do that through this group. Is that correct, Victoria?
Yeah, we can figure out a way to send out a notice to folks here that have attended to let them know. And I do have another question. So the next question is there a way to distinguish between untreated wastewater, partially treated wastewater, and treated wastewater in the tool?
I don't think those categories are explicit in the list. However, you can yourself enter that information. So when you go to the, and Paul, please interrupt me if I'm if this
I think that's correct, Anna.
Yeah, if you go, I don't think I entered it here, so it's not going to come up. But if you have that field of the water and you go to, sorry, when you go to this section here that I'm showing right now, and it has that. So unfortunately, I just don't have it loaded right now, and I don't want to take the time to look for it. But this is where you have a whole bunch of things, of fields where you can enter information on that particular waste stream. That's where you can make that distinction. You can also simply call it other and then specify what it is.
Great. Next question is, how often are there updates on the status of waste management facilities as far as waste acceptance, capacity, or whether they are still in operation?
Okay, a lot of that information is not directly available from the tool. That is information you would have to contact the facility to find out. However, the information that we do have, and let me see if I have any. Okay, so listed here. So as you can see, this only provides a minimum of information on the tool, latitude, longitude, and other things you would have to enter based on conversations with the tool. Now, this data is coming from, or are coming from, another tool called the, I forget the acronym. The acronym is DDRT. I forget, it's disposal something tool. Paul, do you know?
Disaster debris recovery tool.
There it is. Yes, disaster debris recovery tool. That is a mapping tool. And it provides information on all kinds of facilities. That information, as I understand it, is updated on a periodic basis. So there's not a set schedule. It's not like, once a year, all of them get reviewed. Rather, it's a certain subset of them are constantly being updated throughout the year or years. And so the data that you will have through that tool are going to be the best that we have, but may not be 100% current.
Yeah, I would add, we go through about a 3 or 4 year cycle in the hopes that we get all of the disposal facility databases updated every few years, because there's about 20 or so different kinds of facilities, and they're all have to be separately wrangled as databases.
So I hope that answers your question. The information is updated on a somewhat regular basis. You can always call the facility itself and to identify some of this additional information. For example, permit status is not something that we have that we are able to pull from the DDRT. However, if you contact, there is a certain amount of research you still have to do yourself. Let me put it that way. We can't, we provide what we can, that whatever data we have available to us. Unfortunately, some data is either not available to us, or we are not able to link it to this tool for whatever variety of reasons. And so that's information that you're going to have to get directly from the facility.
Some facilities do have that information online, in which case we do populate those fields, but exactly. It's not universally consistent across all the facilities.
Because this is not information that they are required to provide into any of these databases. So it's kind of up to them whether they provide it or not. Makes life a little more complicated, I know, but we do what we can.
So I have a next question. So the next question is, can this tool be used accurately for planning in Canada? Is there a way for users to add Canadian databases to the tool?
That's an excellent question. I think the tool can be used because some of the volume estimates, for example, are going to be the same, right? The amount of waste generated from a particular type of building is not going to change. What you probably will not, or not probably, you definitely will not have, I think, is the facility information, because that is a US, database of US facilities. So if you're in Canada, you can still add facilities manually using and enter them into this tool, but the tool will not be able to pull that information for you. But on the waste streams, it should, because those are going to be, that's not going to change when you cross the border. And certainly a lot of the other fields, community outreach, I mean, most of the other fields are not location specific. So yes, you can use the tool internationally. You just won't have that facilities information provided for you.
Thank you, Anna. Next question is, do you have any SOP on handling radioactive load?
I do not. The tool does not. However, Paul?
That would be one of the things that you find out from your probably the state radiation control person. There's a group of state radiation control professionals called CRCPD, and that would be logical if you had a radioactive waste as part of your materials to include that person as one of your primary contacts, because it varies from state to state, and it's not really governed by EPA rules, so to speak. It's there's a lot of state requirements that are in there,
and also the Department of Energy, so they may have more information for you.
Okay, I have a couple more questions. I know we're running low on time. The next question is, I have 4 different municipalities I cover. Will I need a separate plan for each one? If one can cover, can I enter different locations in each municipality for waste to be collected?
The answer to that is whatever you wish. So if you wish to keep them separate, that's up to you. If you wish to include them, way over here in overview, we've got the scope. This is where you might say this plan covers these 3 or 4 jurisdictions. And any assumptions. If this includes these jurisdictions, however, we are not collecting XYZ information from this or that jurisdiction. So that's entirely up to you. Certainly the waste estimates are based on the facilities, the structures and the square footage, the square area for outdoor wastes and materials. So if you have that information for multiple jurisdictions and you want a plan that covers all of them in a single plan, you can certainly do that. Or if you prefer to keep them separate, you can do that as well. You can even have different plan types. So as you can see, we have different plan types here, right? For different types of incidents. You can have, and what we generally recommend is one all hazards plan that kind of covers all of them. But if you want to have 5 or 6 different plans that cover different types of incidents, you can do that. We even have an other in case we didn't capture a particular incident type. As we move forward, we hope to provide additional information for some of these unique incident types. So additional information on biological incidents, because obviously those are going to be very different from a natural disaster, human disease incidents, such as the pandemic that we are all living through, animal disease, agricultural. Right now, we don't have very much information on agricultural. There's just simply not the data there on what might happen. But that's something we're working with the Department of Agriculture to eventually provide. So really, you can do anything you want. You can have as many plans as you want. Here in my plans, that's where you would give them a different name for each one, so you know which one you're working on. And you can have, I don't think there's a limit on the number of plans you can have. So you can have even, 3 jurisdictions, 3 plans for each jurisdiction separately, and then another plan that combines them all. That is really very much up to you.
Great, thank you, Anna. And we have gone beyond 3 o'clock, so we will go ahead and close out this webinar. Thank you so much for the presentation and the demonstration, and thank you all for attending. See you all next time.
And if anybody has additional questions or even suggestions on things that you think would be important to add to this tool in the next round of improvements, please do let us know. I think my contact information will be available through the webinar information.